Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Day One Podcast. I'm Adam Daly.
And I'm Brett Nord.
We are excited to be back for week 3.
That's right.
Episode 3, I suppose.
Good
and
day.
Coming to you from Day One HQ, which, just to state the obvious, you may hear office noises in the back as we work on constructing our podcast studio, quote unquote.
That's right.
Air quotes don't really work on podcasts, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because Brett can see me, and there's this giant glass door where our engineers can also watch us doing this. Hard at work. Yes, our engineers are hard at work. It's Friday, getting stuff done for the weekend, wrapping everything up, and making it look good.
Right on.
But yeah, we're actually kind of turning one of our conference rooms into a pseudo podcast room so that we can continue to do this here. And it's starting to come together, I think. We've got some soundproofing that's going to start going in. And I mean, just they're foam panels and stuff that we'll put on the walls. But I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And when we recorded the first one, we thought, is anyone going to listen to this? Let's not invest anything until we hear some feedback.
Right.
And we actually get we are getting great feedback.
Yes.
People are enjoying it.
Honestly motivates you just to keep going. I think that's what kept me going on my other projects where you start hearing back from people and they're like, yeah, I really enjoyed the show, or, here's what I'd like to hear, or whatever. And we love that feedback. So please keep sending that in, and we'll tell you. It's at podcast@dayoneapp.com. You can email us that feedback. And, we will love to hear from you. In fact, today we're going to talk and respond to some emails that we received over the past couple of weeks, right?
That's right. And I think, we'll talk about it as we get to that section, but we're so grateful for everyone's input. Really makes a big difference for us in doing this.
Yep.
It's not about us. It's about you and about helping you use the app better as we learn too.
Yes. So we wanted to start out just by bringing to your attention some updates, and you may have already seen these in the App Store, but for the sake of putting it on the show and making it public out there like this, we want to mention that 2.6.2 and 2.6.3 were released on iOS since our last episode. And those mostly addressed some bugs, some maintenance stuff that we wanted to get out there, some minor things, one of them which was the calendar bug that we mentioned last time.
Right.
That is now fixed. So when you tap on a date in the calendar view, it will now take you to the correct date. Before, it was doing a day before, and it had to deal with time zones and stuff like that. So that annoying little bug is fixed, plus some maintenance stuff on the back end that hopefully you'll notice some performance improvement there. And 2.6.1 for the Mac was also released. It addressed a bug for a migration error, a pop-up that people were seeing when they would start up their computer and open Day One. And then it also addressed a crash that some people were seeing on Mac OS 10.11, which is El Capitan.
That's right.
It's interesting being in the software world, and Apple has kind of a unique situation where, for the Mac, it's a little harder to upgrade. It's not as easy to just go out and buy a new Mac. They're a little more expensive. You're investing in it a little bit more. But there's a lot of advantages for us updating our app for those newer OS versions. We get to take advantage of technologies that are introduced by Apple and, just make our overall experience better. And so if you can, where possible, we do recommend staying current with Mac OS and iOS if possible.
Sure. So, especially an app like ours that interacts with both. So you want that handoff, and that's such a cool feature that you want.
Yes. So those were the major updates since our last episode. And we just wanted to mention a little bit more of our roadmap stuff. A lot of the purpose behind this show is to keep you apprised of what we're doing, what's going on behind the scenes. And as far as we're allowed to as, the business, we don't want to be giving away all our secrets, but we want to keep it transparent and, keep you apprised of what's going on. So a lot of people have been asking about, when is audio coming? And ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, it's coming. I promise.
We've seen it in action.
We're not purposefully holding back for any reason. We just want to do it right and make sure that it's great. So we did release a premium-only feature in 2.6.3 on iOS, which were the new journal colors. So now there are 5 or 6 new journal colors that you can choose from to customize your journals. They are a premium-only feature, so consider subscribing to get access to those. But it was just kind of a little taste that we are working on improvements.
Yes.
More is coming. And those more things is what I'm going to tell you about right now. One of the biggest things that we're working on is the new editor. And we've had questions that have come in through email about that and through Twitter. This is a big deal for us. We want to be, now that Day One is a free app with basic features, we want it to be an accessible app and not just something that, developers or more tech-savvy people use, but we want it to be a journal app for everyone.
Right.
And so the new editor is a lot of it is focused on a what you see is what you get type of editor, where if you bold something, you bold it, and you have less of the markdown in the text itself, which sometimes would throw people off, just speaking from a customer service experience. So that's coming, and that's a big deal. We want to make this thing right. We want to make it great, and that needs to be done first before audio, because audio is dependent on how that will look, how it's displayed in the entry, how it will play, the playback and all that stuff. And we're still working out the kinks with transcription on the audio feature, stuff like that. So all of these things are coming, and we're hoping to have that ready for our next major update, which will be version 3.0. So,
to your point, Adam, you mentioned that we could have gone out with some of these features sooner. Since I've been at Day One, I've seen what's going on with the audio and the translation and or transcription and what the process goes into it. There's a lot of evaluation of solutions. It's not just, let's just go with Apple's solution, but let's find one that's actually really good.
Yeah.
And that takes time.
Yeah. Working with Paul, we had him on last week, and it was great to have his insight. He, what I've found, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, I'm sure he doesn't, but he's a very deliberate person. And he wants to make something great, and he'll take the time to make it great instead of just releasing, a half-worked project or feature. We want to make it great so that it works, people enjoy it, that it's actually enhancing the experience in Day One. So he once said that sometimes the last 10% of development is what takes the longest, because it's that polish. Making it stand out, making it really efficient. That's the other thing. We don't want to bog down the app with unnecessary back-end processes. Right. So these are coming. I don't have a date yet. If I did, I promise I would tell you. But that's one of the things that our team is focused on. They are working on that new editor. They're working on audio, and they're getting ready for that 3.0 release. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support. Because of subscribers like you and earlier supporters, we're able to have that runway to be able to complete these features. So that's a big deal to us.
Sure is.
I almost just said we're a guerrilla operation here, but that's not necessarily the case. But being a smaller team, we have to use our resources wisely. We have to prioritize different things and really get them nailed down. So that's why I love working here, though.
That's right.
I love that kind of grassroots feel, that kind of startup feel, I guess. Just being in these earlier stages and being able to really work on a product that I feel passionate about personally, because it enhances the quality of one's life, I believe.
Of course.
So those are the big things coming in 3.0.
Very cool.
Anything else? I think those are our major roadmap things that are coming that we want to announce right now. Anything else is definitely on our help guides. You can search for the popular feature requests page on help.dayoneapp.com to see kind of other things that are on the roadmap. Of course, one of the big ones is Apple Pencil support. We don't have a date for that, but it's definitely on our minds. But sometimes we don't want to spread ourselves too thin and work on a bunch of different features all at once. Right. It takes time doing one feature at a time. So I think that's about it for roadmap stuff.
That's good.
But thank you for all of your feedback.
In fact, speaking of feedback, we got some great questions.
Oh, yes.
Coming in. And again, I want to say how much we appreciate that. It's one thing to feel like, we're doing a podcast and we want to just kind of see where it goes. And then Adam and I talk about this a lot. We're both big podcast fans, listeners, enthusiasts. And I don't know about you, Adam, but I've never, I listen to a lot. I've never given feedback.
Why?
To somebody. I know.
Why?
I know. I think in my mind, this would be a better thing if they did this or that. But following through to actually, I've changed that now. After seeing what comes in and how much we appreciate it, I'm going to start doing that.
Give it
Pass
to the people
on.
that you listen to.
Right.
Well, I've done that for a few smaller podcasts. I've done it to one bigger one, and I didn't really hear back. They probably get a lot more contact. But with smaller ones, they'll respond back to you, and it actually is really nice to be part of the conversation, I think.
Yes.
So that's what I like.
Yes, totally.
It's that sense of community that we want for our show. So, yeah, please keep sending in your emails.
That's right.
Let's
do it.
So one of our questions, I didn't get a name on this one. I'm sorry. So forgive me if you're listening and you asked this question, but they wanted to know how often will we be doing our show, the Day One podcast. And right now we're going to do it bi-monthly. So twice a month, every other week, we'll release a new episode. And we've so far started on Mondays. That'll be our release date for the episode. And we'll send out a tweet and stuff like that announcing the new episode. But you can go ahead and subscribe on iTunes. You can subscribe on Stitcher. And you can also follow us on Spotify. I believe we're on Google Play. I'll have to double check on that one. And we hope to be soon on iHeartRadio. They have a few more requirements that we have to be active for 90 days and stuff like that. But we're going to try and get on all the platforms that you can. If you use an app like Overcast or something like that, you can just plug in our RSS feed and get the show that way. I believe it's day1.libsyn, libsyn.com/RSS. And then you can plug that into almost any podcast app and get our feed.
And if you're listening to this now, you figured it out.
Yes.
Because you're listening to it.
You are smart. I'm just, want to get on the subscription train.
Yes.
Not just for Day One, but also for the Day One podcast, which is free.
That's right. Of course.
We're not charging you for this one. Every couple weeks, or every other week is when we want to do an episode. Right. Depending on the needs, we'll evaluate that and see where it goes from there.
And that question was hard to know tone. How often will we have the show? Was he saying, like, I want more, or, God, well,
it's too much.
You've already done too much. How often?
The damage is done, Brett. The damage is done.
Yeah,
but that's okay. I don't mind that. Well, and the other thing is we kind of wanted to alternate our episodes. We mentioned this before, but our odd number episodes so far have been Brett and I talking about roadmap stuff, talking about updates, and then a weekly tip. And then also
viewer questions or follow
questions.
Feedback. Yep.
And then the opposite episode, our so far even numbers, we want to do like an interview series where we're talking with internal employees, we're talking with external users, beta testers, whatever it may be, and hear from the community.
And be prepared. If you give us a question with feedback, we may respond and say, "Would love you to also be
on the show."
To be on the show.
Yes,
so would love that. Got some great use cases already of people talking about how they use Day One.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, we have also been asked about a web client. Roger asked us about that, when we're going to incorporate that. And I think it comes down to the end-to-end encryption, doesn't it? To that?
Yeah. We actually, so every week we have a weekly meeting where everybody kind of showcases what they've been working on the past week. And our web team talked about ways they're going to be able to incorporate end-to-end encryption with a web client, which is not easy.
Right.
I mean, we want to make sure your data is safe, it's protected, it's only accessible by your private key, and so that's what they're investigating right now. They're going through that process of how does our end-to-end encryption work, what's going to work best on a web client access for that, because right now it does not work. We have a web beta available where you can go on and check out a read-only view of your entries, but it won't work if you have end-to-end encryption enabled on your journals. So that's what we're trying to figure out. How does that work and how to best keep you safe?
Yeah, for questions like that, like with Roger, we replied with a little bit more technical description of that.
Yeah.
We got some great feedback from Tim after our first show that maybe we went a little too deep in the weeds with the outage issue. And that's, again, great feedback to get. So we can one-off and give updates if you want more details. Yeah. But for this one, I think we'll try to keep it a little high level. Well,
to that point, Brett and I are not technical people in that sense. Well, I'm not a developer. No. Have you ever developed?
No.
Never coded or anything like that?
I haven't.
I've played with the Swift playgrounds. Have you ever done that?
Yeah,
where you're just moving little code blocks around, but that's it.
I have too, so I guess we are programmers.
I guess.
We're in.
Very basic. I can tell the guy to walk down and eat the gem. That's what I can do.
Exactly. We're in. We're good. We're
just entry level.
Sure.
That's what it is.
That's right.
But, what's interesting, though, is we've learned a lot, I think, just being in this field, because you've done technical support for a long time.
Game development.
Game development. You've worked with Apple doing stuff like that. So we've learned a lot just secondhand knowledge, I guess, and just asking questions. And, coming down to it, if you want to learn something, that's what you just ask questions.
Yes.
You can find out a lot of cool stuff that way. But our next...
I will say, though, on that point, it does give you an appreciation for the process.
Yes.
And all that goes in. And we've touched on that a few times already, just the last 10%. But it really does come down to that. There's just so many pieces to the puzzle, and it's a tricky business. But
and I didn't understand that before I worked here. Like,
right.
Why should I pay for an app? And that actually goes into my next question here from Quinn.
Right.
We talked a little bit about free apps, and I think, well, there's construction going on here.
Quinn and free apps.
No, I know. I just got a smile from Johnny over here. They know that construction's going on below our office space, and so that sounded funny.
I thought it was the developers actually making the app.
Yeah.
As we speak.
It's a physical process.
Yes.
But we talked a little bit about, I think I made a comment that, free apps make their money other ways. Mm-hmm. So, and this is what I found out working here is, if you want, how do I even say this? So there's tons of software out there.
Sure.
And if you remember in the old days when we had to buy complete upgrades to Windows 95, Windows 98, those were paid upgrades every few years that you bought a whole new operating system to upgrade to. And the game has changed quite a bit. Now, technically speaking, I think you could go back and say that was a subscription, right? If you had to upgrade every couple of years, you were basically in a bi-yearly subscription or whatever it was, right? Sure. Because, when you buy a product like software that doesn't necessarily have a tangible physical thing, you're buying it as is. And then any maintenance updates or feature adds or anything like that are basically at the cost of the developer until a new paid app is released, right?
Right.
Am I articulating that fine?
Yep.
So, a developer has a couple of choices, I guess, to do. They can, release a free app, and then the development costs are on them, however they seek to get that. And sometimes they do that through advertisements in the app or, whatever.
Venture capitalists.
Or like some apps will use your data, use the stuff that you're providing in there and sell that to outside advertising.
And you are the product.
You are the product. Now, I didn't get that before. Now, let me just say this is not the official position of Day One. This is my personal opinion and understanding of it, and that's all I'm trying to say. Use the apps that you want to use, but just be aware that, if you're not paying for a product, then you may be the product with the data you're supplying to that app, which I hadn't considered before. And I think that's an interesting thing that we may not all be aware of, and maybe we are. Maybe some of you are, we knew that from the beginning. That's great. I didn't know that.
Right.
So,
and I think we've all been burned by supporting a smaller developer and then getting that email a year later. Sorry, we have to shut down because we either couldn't get funding or we didn't have a business model that would make sense for us, viable, or we're being acquired by X large company and therefore, all of you're basically a product now for this new company.
Yes.
And
that's a tough thing.
Yeah.
And it comes down to what do you really need in your life? Do I need, this is not to talk despairingly about any product, but just evaluating what I use personally. Do I need my Netflix, Hulu, and HBO Now subscriptions? Do I need all three of them? Right. I mean, granted, I may not be able to get all the same content from all of them, but...
So the answer is yes, you do. I know you.
I have all three of them, and I'm not endorsing them either. I'm just saying. But sometimes we have to evaluate what do we really want to be paying for, what am I going to get the most value out of, and then make that decision. Right. And it's a fine line, So just to speak to that, be aware of, if you're not actually paying for a product, you may be the product in just the data you're supplying to that app. Or, if you see advertisements in an app, a developer has to be able to pay engineers to build the product. Sure. They have to be able to pay for overhead costs. They have to be able to pay for server space or whatever, maintenance updates. If you want to be able to contact a customer support person, i.e. me, you got to be able to pay for those things or else the developer has to find other ways to get that money. Yeah. And for Day One, it worked for a while to be a one-time paid app. but just looking down the road and what the future is going to look like, we want day one to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
And so that was a decision we had to make. Either release a paid upgrade every year or two, or look at the subscription model, maybe bring that cost down a little bit. So it is a yearly thing, but maybe that cost is a little bit different than a larger paid upgrade every couple of years, you know? Yeah. So it just depends. Honestly, like I said, you have to look at the apps that you use or the software that you use, depend on, decide what you really want. I get a chai tea every maybe twice. No, not like you, Brett. This guy's blood is mostly caffeine. Right. I'm just kidding. But maybe twice a week. Sure. Right. And if I just didn't do that once, like that pays for my day one subscription.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I know I'm getting like a $4 chai. I got to find cheaper chai. That's what I got to do.
Before we turn it into a day one telethon, because we're...
No, I know. I like I said, I hate to be an apologist. I said that last week or last episode, but it's just my perspective has changed since I started working here, because I was not always in that camp.
Sure.
But
makes sense.
You learn different things, and your opinions are allowed to be also
Yes.
You can change perspectives and be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is why. Great.
Yeah.
So thanks for your question, Quinn.
Yeah, definitely. We also got a great question about Android parity. I think that kind of leads into with the development costs.
Oh, yeah.
And we've primarily been a Mac, Apple, iOS house, and supporting Android is a fairly new development for us.
Yep. And we just relaunched that in December of last year, so it's pretty new as far as software goes. And there are some things that are lacking as far as the parity between iOS and Android, but that's something that we're undertaking. One of the major things that's coming that the developers are working on right now is supporting encryption on Android, which I know is a big ask. And that's a lot of undertaking, especially doing it with our own sync service, making sure that it's all working, generating keys and encrypting everything on the server and downloading correctly, all that kind of stuff. It's going to take a little bit of time, but that's one of the major features that we're working on right now is end-to-end encryption on Android. And then I think the other things will come. Different things, activity feed. I know people have asked about that on Android. Just different things like that. So yeah, I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
But, thank you for your patience on that one.
And we'll also give an update every time we do these roadmaps on Android.
Yeah.
I know sometimes Android users feel like they're neglected because they're a smaller percentage, but we definitely want to give updates on what we're doing.
No, I think it's a great market too. And there's some great devices out there that I think are fantastic. I've been playing with, as a test device, I've been using just the first edition Pixel. That's a pretty decent phone. It's a really great phone. So, it's a great market to be in. We want to definitely be accessible to more users, and that's the plan, right? Yeah. Get people journaling, get people using this this product. So.
Thanks to Ravi and Quinn from Arizona
for
those questions.
Theodore asks about audio, and we mentioned that a little bit in our updates. It's coming, and I think just one of the things we've been waiting for is that editor to be done, and then figuring out how we're going to employ transcription. Because, that's another thing that I didn't realize is apps that use services like a transcription service or a map service or something like that are usually paying another third party to use those features. Like if you want to use Google Maps within another app, they're usually paying per query. And I never realized that before. So costs can add up, and that's something a developer has to take into consideration. So audio's coming, I promise.
Awesome. Also, we got a question from Volker Otto from Germany who asked about, he loves the Way I Journal series we do.
Oh, yeah, on the blog.
Too. I think it's great on the blog, right? And he was asking if we were going to plan incorporating some of those ideas into the podcast. We absolutely are.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's a fantastic series. And we've had some great interviews with people getting their perspective on how they use Day One, because primarily speaking, it's a personal, private journal.
Yes.
But I think users have found numerous ways to expand on that and use it for different things. I personally use it for all of my podcast notes for this one and my other podcast. I use it for business meetings because, you can do different things like checklists, bullet points, different headers and stuff like that. So it works really great as a note taker. But then I also use it for a journal. I've got this one journal that I was inspired by Paul to use, or he had this, and he had a book printed out of his ticket stubs Did I talk about that before?
No.
It's one of my favorite journals. So every ticket I get, movie, concert, sports
Not parking
event,
or speeding.
No.
Okay.
I've
fun kind of tickets.
I have not gotten a speeding ticket in a long time.
Nice.
I'm a good driver. Come on, Brett. But no, I love this idea of taking a picture of my ticket stubs. Went and saw a movie last week, and then sports event here. Different things.
So what I'm seeing, for those of you who can't see it, which includes everybody but me,
right?
Adam is showing me images. I'm seeing some screenshots of wallet, right?
Yeah,
Things he's put in his wallet, tickets there.
A lot of the movies I go to now, I just buy from my device, and then they come in the form of they can be added to the Apple Wallet, so I can just scan my ticket.
Yes.
Dude, that's so convenient.
Yeah.
But so I just screenshot it and then crop it up and put it in there as an image, and so then I also mark down like who I went with.
Clever.
But then some pictures or some tickets that are physical, I'll take a picture of it, crop it, and stick it in there. So it's one of my favorite journals, and that way I don't have to keep little scraps of paper around my house.
Sure. That's right. And since I've worked here, I've loved getting to know the employees here and how they use Day One. And one thing we talked about with the employee interviews, not just what they do at Day One, but how they use Day One.
Yeah.
And I was also so impressed with some of the feedback we got from listeners on I'm new to Day One. A lot of the how I blog or how I journal features we've done are people that are power users or really creative and used it a lot. A lot of people just say, I want to know how to get started.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm struggling with. And I think those are people that we need to have on and feature as well, is like, how are they approaching it from starting from scratch?
Yeah. I think that would be great.
Setting up journals. They're setting up journals we hadn't thought of in certain ways. And I think those are important to have as well.
Yep. Let's do it. So that's on the plan. Volker, thank you very much for your request there.
Absolutely.
Our next email came from a user called Spaceship Dev. First of all, he wanted to say that we were vexing the hell out of him.
We meaning Brett specifically.
Filler words are kind of interesting, and Brett has a few. I've got my own, but he mentioned that Brett's yes and ums were driving him crazy. But no, I've
tried to limit those. Either that, or we should turn it into a drinking party.
Yes.
A drinking game.
So
anytime I say a or a hey or a yes.
Yeah, we're recording this at 12:45 p.m., so don't start now. But if you're listening to this later in the evening, anytime Brett says yes, take a drink.
And I have been conscious so far on this one, so nobody's buzzed right now.
No, I noticed I started doing it. I've taken it over, Brett. It's transference is what it is.
Yes.
You've pushed it all over here. No, it's okay.
Well, I'm new to podcasting, so it's fun for me to do this. It's a learning experience. We're sitting across from each other, so I feel like I forget we're actually recording and we're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Which I normally would say, to show you that I'm listening.
Right. So. It's an indication that you're listening. But I kind of like it too, so it's not just silent on your end, and that's fine.
Sure.
I feel like if you are hearing some of my filler words, that you may feel it's more real.
Right.
And this is definitely not a scripted show, but we're also conscious that we don't want to annoy you.
Right.
So
exactly.
We'll work on those little annoyances that you.
And
that you
Adam
have
is
with
an
us.
old pro from doing a Lost podcast.
But I say all the time.
See, I just did.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry if I bug you, but
it's got to be amazing to be able to do a Lost podcast twice a month.
We release four times a month every week. Yeah.
Wow. How anyone could talk about Lost ad nauseum is lost on me.
I'm telling you, there is a community out there of Lost fans that are still. They have a convention now that you can go to. I think they have it every 4 or 8 years or something like that. But you go to Oahu and just hang out with a bunch of other people who love the TV show Lost.
That's awesome.
I've actually thought about it. How cool would that be? I want to go to Hawaii. I've never been, so let's get out there while they're doing Lost. I was trying to convince my wife that, and she's like, come on, we're going to Hawaii, and that's what you want to do? Yes.
I'm with your wife on this one.
Okay. That's fine. I know. I get a little crazy out there.
But I actually really do appreciate the feedback we got from Spaceship Dev. We responded back and forth, and I think he was a little surprised that I was so enthusiastic to get the feedback. He's like, with love. I gave you feedback. It was great.
Yeah. Feedback is an interesting thing. Depending on how you take it, you can either grow or become cynical and...
Sure.
it's less constructive. But
Yes.
if you take any feedback, whether it is intended to be constructive or not, and say, okay, what can I take from this and improve?
Right.
That's totally on you.
And what helped too, and I realized this is not about me. It's not about you. It's not us trying to break into a podcasting career. Maybe for you, you are, but
we'll see.
As long as we keep the focus on providing tight information, updated, helpful information, that's what it's about.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree.
Boom. Last question.
Yes.
We got a great one. In fact, this is, I think, a really great discussion that we could start here. And then if anyone has suggestions for Andrew, who wrote this question in, would love to hear that as well. And his question is basically, when you write in your journal, how is your tense? So if you're talking about an event you did a couple days ago, do you go back to that entry as if you're living it then and record it in the present tense? Or do you refer to it back, a couple days ago I did this? What do you think, Adam?
That's a good question. In fact, I'm going to have to pull up my old entries and just see how I do it.
Sure.
I think for the most part, my journaling happens at night at the end of the day. And I'm looking at just some of my entries here, and it looks like I do it past tense, but just for that day. So, yeah. I'm just looking at some of my verbs here, and they look like they're all past tense. I accepted. We met. But then there may be some commentary about, my actual present tense. Like, I'm excited about this. I can, I see these changes, whatever. Yeah. Whatever I'm saying, sure. Making a commentary about the day.
Yes.
Also maybe at the bottom of the entry or something. But I think I recap the day in a past tense, but just usually at the end of the day. Or at least from that perspective. So if I have to go back a couple of days, I'll still write it as if it were like I were writing it that night and recapping the day. Maybe it doesn't make a difference.
I feel weird doing that. It's almost like I'm lying.
You're traveling in the future, Brett, or in the past.
In the past, yeah.
Time travel.
Yeah. I also think it's important, and I did a little research after I got this question about, I think it's important to realize who's going to read it, right? If it's for other people, I think it does make more sense maybe to talk in the tense where, you're referring to make the reader feel like they're in the same situation if you're sharing with someone. If it's just about you, I don't think it really matters.
Right.
I think it's just whatever you feel comfortable with. And if it's about describing feelings, use whatever tense you want.
Yeah. And, it also may depend on, what's the consistency or frequency that you're journaling.
Yes.
If you're a nightly journaler, like I try to be,
yeah.
Maybe that changes your tense, or maybe you recap a week or something like that. I know some people, it just depends on I think the important part is consistency rather than frequency.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing it once a week on a Saturday or Sunday night or something like that, as long as I'm doing it each time, I mean, that's what's going to make the biggest impact in your life rather than a more sporadic approach or something like that where it's hard to keep a habit. Like, how long does it take to keep a habit?
3 weeks.
Is that all it
21
is?
days.
21 days. That's not bad. So I guess if you write weekly, you have to do it for 21 weeks. But there's a lot of great features in day one that will help you keep that consistency.
You mean 21 days, right?
Yeah.
Not 21 weeks.
No, but if you're writing weekly.
Oh, right, yeah.
It takes you over 21 weeks, right?
Yes. Of course, yes.
I'm being facetious. But like the reminders feature, you can set up a reminder how frequently you want that reminder to come up and say, it's time to write in your journal. You can even include a template in there or whatever you want and have it go to a specific journal or set up multiple reminders. There's also like location reminders. So after you've been to so many locations, you can prompt it to have you remind you, or just a regular daily prompt that will say, it's time to write in your journal.
That's right.
What have you done so far today or whatever. Yeah. So there's like a few different ways that day one allows you to keep that consistency if you want that habit. If that's something that you desire, there are features that will support you in that.
Yeah,
so.
and I can speak for myself. These things really help. You talk about the reminder. I've changed mine. I just looked it up, and mine is, yo, Brett, time to record your life. When I say record my life, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a little more important than just a travel log of where I traveled today.
Yeah.
But this is actually my life, and I want to record it. And so that's just a personal reminder. I also love with the Apple Watch that I can just, as I am feeling an emotion or something I want to record, I can right there with my watch record it.
Do the dictation.
Right. And that's so slick. And then having the daily log of where I've traveled by the end of the day, that helps me not feel like I got to start from scratch and recreate the day. It's like, oh yeah, here's my triggers of where I went. So that helps.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I guess it depends on what you want to write. I think in our first episode, I mentioned something about recording mundane things, and I didn't mean that in a negative way, because sometimes that's stuff you would like to keep around or stuff that you'd like to remember. I just meant that as a, how does that compare with maybe other things you would write down, like feelings or impressions that you may have. So, I think one of the biggest things that you can do to figure out what's the best way for you as far as tense goes is maybe define what journaling means for you.
Right.
Does that mean writing down those mundane things? Does it mean having it more introspective as far as your thoughts and feelings and stuff like that? Or how did you react to a situation? Or how did you react to a meeting you had? So it may not be the elements or the contents of that meeting, but your overall impressions of what happened there. So define what that means for you, and then be consistent on it.
And again, bringing up that point of who's going to read it. If it's really just for you, then that's one thing. If you're thinking this for posterity or family or whatever, and I want to keep it at that level, then you can do that.
Yep. And there are benefits to both, I think. Being able to free write without any sort of fear that someone might read it, then I think in some way that's kind of a liberating thing, where you might be more willing to express your feelings than if you thought, oh, well, what if somebody reads this? I want to paint a better picture of myself, And I think social media has got us into that kind of habit too, where we are painting the best picture of ourselves because we're keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly.
Whether
the
it's
highlight reel.
Yeah. Whether it's subconscious or not, that's kind of how we treat it.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a picture of my kid bawling because, I would yell at him because he couldn't have ice cream at night. But I don't know, whatever it is.
As you're eating ice cream at night. Yeah, I get it.
That was a terrible example, but I was just trying to come up with something. But we usually don't capture those moments, or at least we don't share them outside. We're like, oh, look, my family's all happy. We're smiling. Right. Or, I'm snowboarding all the time.
Right.
Where, I'm trying to scrape by and get cash so I can go snowboarding or whatever it is.
Yes.
Having something where you know that nobody's going to read that may prompt you to be more free, more open with your emotions, which I think is extremely healthy. It's so healthy, Brett.
We see case studies. We have people write in and say how much it helps. And I think that's one of the great reasons why we have developed the ability to have multiple journals.
Yep.
One you do want, maybe for every family or whatever. Another one you want. I have one called Deep Thoughts.
Oh, I like that.
So far, there's no entries. But the concept is at some point, I'm just going to use that for my really deep, intimate thoughts.
Now, Brett, you got to get on that one, though. No, and not just people that have written into us, but there are actual, I think, psychological studies that how important journaling can be to improve your memory, to improve your emotional stability, just because it's cathartic to get it out on paper. You have a stressful event happening, a very emotionally impacting event. You write it down. It's like punching the pillow,
That's right.
Getting it out on paper. So there's a lot of health benefits. So I know we kind of danced around to Andrew's question there a little bit, but I think it kind of speaks to what he was looking for. Do we write in the past tense or present tense? Honestly, it depends on how you want to tell your story. Right?
Yep. And share with us how you use the tense, those of you that are listening.
I agree.
Thanks.
I think that's it for our emails this week. And we're going to continue with this. We may not have time every single time to get out to everybody's email, especially as more of you write in, which we hope you do.
Yes.
But we would like to highlight some of those questions and maybe address them just so that we can get that out there and hopefully help someone else that may have the same question. So
right on.
Keep writing in at podcast@dayoneapp.com, and we'll do our best to respond to you via email. And if not, we'll try to talk to you and speak to you via the podcast itself. So
right on.
I just have one tip this week. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So in day one, if you're on the at the very bottom of the screen, you've got 5 different icons. You've got the timeline view, which is the bottom left, the photos view, and then you've got this plus button that you can open up the activity feed or create an entry, and then you've got the maps view and the calendar view. What's great about these is there are shortcuts within them, and I think it's something hidden. It's not super obvious, but let's say I'm scrolled down further in my timeline to a previous date. If I just tap the timeline button again, it will quickly scroll me to the very top.
Nice.
So it's a nice little shortcut, so you don't have to scroll all the way back up. And you can do that on the photos view, the timeline view, and the calendar view. So if you're scrolled back to a previous date or a future date or something like that, tap the icon at the bottom again in that same view, and it will quickly scroll you to the top. Nice little hidden feature. Also, if you tap this down here, it will open up so if I'm on the timeline view, I know, I'm describing it. If I'm on the timeline view and I'm already at the top, if I tap the timeline button again, it'll open up the journal picker. But as I've been playing with it this week, we mentioned the new journal drawer.
Yep.
I love just being able to swipe over so easily. And you can do that from anywhere on the page. And I love it because then with these larger phones, I don't have to reach up to the top left corner to open up my journal drawer. I can just slide over, switch it up, go to a new journal, bam, I'm there. Nice. Super slick. And that's only going to get improved. We're working on some improvements for like the filters and stuff like that in version 2.7. So stay tuned. Hopefully those will be something that you're looking forward to. I am.
For sure.
I just think these little tweaks to the UI, taking advantage of Apple's OS, that we can really have some cool gestures in there that will make, switching around different journals, make it a lot easier for you. So that's all I got.
Awesome.
That's my weekly tip.
It's great. Look forward to next podcast. We're going to be interviewing our development team.
Yep.
We can start with our head programmer.
Yeah, our senior Mac dev. He doesn't know it yet. We should probably tell him.
We told him.
I know. So we're going to interview him and have him on the show and talk about his development process, his experience here, and we also want to get into his mind about how he uses Day One. So
deep dive.
Right?
It's going to be great.
So thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure you go and subscribe on iTunes. Leave us a review there if you'd like. And then also you can write into us at podcast@dayoneapp.com. Write us your questions. Write us how you use your journal. We'd love to bring those out on the air when we can. And what else? Make sure you follow us on our social media feeds as well. Of course, on Twitter, we're at Day1App. On Instagram, we're at Day1App. And on Facebook, facebook.com/Day1App.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Right?
Day One App.
It's, yeah, it makes it easy, right? But go follow us there. We've actually been using Instagram a little bit more and posting pictures around the office. And then I got a cool little Instagram story of Brett today, so that'll be fun to put up. But yeah, we thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thanks for listening.
We will see you next time.
Have a great day. One.
Yes.